Hi, my name is Vincent Policastro, and my house was flooded in Hurricane Sandy. I lived in Mystic Islands, which is like 20 minutes north from Stockton. I'm currently living in a rental home in Waretown, which is about 35-40 minutes from Stockton. I was in my house, and it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and in my back porch there was water already, and my mom came up to me and she was like, we have to go, we have to grab stuff and go. And we put the cats upstairs in my room with food and water and took all of our dogs and our puppies and we brought them to my grandfather's house. And his house wasn't flooded by then, so we had a couple extra hours to stay there and figure out what we were going to do. My dad's coworker offered to let us stay at his house, so we grabbed everything that we could and we drove. We had no clue how bad it was going to be.
Let's head straight now to Hurricane Sandy.
And a Fox News alert to begin happening now on Hurricane Sandy.
Forecasters have found a new word to describe the potential impact of Hurricane Sandy on the East Coast. They're calling it Frankenstorm.
And then that infamous turn to the west is...
If this track comes true, it is the worst case scenario, John. A tropical storm that transitions into an extratropical storm because...
With a blast of Arctic air from the north, three elements colliding over the country's most populated corridor.
That's probably where the most severe coastal flooding could be.
In parts of the Northeast is going to be destructive, historic, and unfortunately life-threatening.
The biggest concern in the coming days is the potential for 4 to 10-foot coastal surge.
High seas, rip currents, beach erosion, coastal flooding, certainly storm surge as this storm moves on shore.
Storm surge risk is extreme.
At best, locally, some places could top out at a foot or more after this is all said and done.
And this could cause extensive, catastrophic damage.
The next day came and we went back to our house, and we saw in our neighborhood, we saw where the water line was on other buildings that were higher up than our house. And we saw boats in people's yards and cars that were flooded and just trash everywhere and floating docks in people's front yards and stuff. The police had our road blocked off and we weren't even allowed to go to our house. It was way, way worse than we thought it was going to be. We were driving around looking for hotels, and they were either overbooked, had no power, or didn't accept pets. Luckily, my mom has a cousin who lives in Tabernacle. We drove all the way up to Tabernacle and stayed there for 2 or 3 days. And while we were there, we found out that the junior high school in my hometown had become a Red Cross shelter, and they were accepting animals too. We stayed in the shelter for about a week, and then they had to close the shelter down because school had to start back up. That's when our family had to separate. My younger brother and I went to stay with my friend Austin, who lived in town and also goes to Stockton, so I was able to get rides with him to school. My youngest brother and my oldest brother went to stay with my oldest brother's girlfriend for a little while. And my parents and the animals went to stay with one of my dad's other coworkers. I stayed with my friend for about 3 or 4 months. My family finally found a rental home in Waretown, which is where we're currently staying. And so then I was able to move back in with my family, and I actually got to have Thanksgiving dinner with my family and have Christmas with my family too. We ended up being really fortunate. We ended up all back together, be it a little disheveled, but we made it out alive, so there's that. Seeing my hometown like that was really hard to deal with, and it still is. I still work in my hometown. I still have a job at the Acme in my hometown, so I have to go there every day. And occasionally I'll have to go to my house and get the mail, because we still get mail there sometimes. It's really hard. I want to be back there so bad. I miss living in my hometown. That's where I grew up. That's where my whole life is, and that's where all my friends are, and that's how I set up my life. I set everything up adjacent to where I live. My house had about 5 feet of water in it, and the actual concrete slab that my house sits on cracked and started to shift and started to sink. We got money from the government, from like FEMA and other organizations. Our first builder, we found he was going to give us a good deal, so we had to give him a $25,000 deposit to start work on the house. And he cut and capped the pipes, and then he took off with the $25,000. Our house was an empty lot for a little while, and then we went with a friend of my parents. He gave us a better deal because he had heard what happened to us. So now we're just waiting for more money from the government to finish building our house. Our house is about halfway done right now. It's up on pilings, and it's framed, and there's some paneling on the side, but that's pretty much it. It resembles what a house should look like, but it's not totally done yet. As far as like the tourism areas go, most of the beaches are back, and a lot of the boardwalk got fixed, but I know a lot of people from my hometown and other places that are still dealing with builders, still dealing with the government, trying to get money, and still not in their house yet. I know a couple people on my street who just got into their house a couple months ago, a year ago, so it's coming along, but people are pretending like it's over. And for a lot of people, it's still very real, and it's still very much happening. It's usually after traumatic events and stuff like that that you really get to see how good-natured people can be. The Red Cross shelter was an amazing thing, because we really had nowhere to go, and we had all the animals with us, and we had nowhere to take them. Just getting to be there and having somewhere to stay and sleep, and knowing that our animals were safe and having food every day was just a huge blessing. And so that was a really good thing to have. I still deal with it every day. I'm not back in my house yet. I live 25 minutes out of the way of my whole life. I still work at Acme. I still have to drive there 5 days a week. I still go to school at Stockton, so I still have to drive 35, 40 minutes out of my way. Also, I deal with it psychologically. When I go to my house to pick up the mail or whatever, it like hurts to see my house just sitting there empty, still not done. And I mean, the 3-year anniversary is just about to hit, and it feels like it's been forever. Whenever I think about like celebrating holidays and stuff like that at my old house, that's what really gets me. Just because those are all obviously happy memories at my old house. I'm glad I have this rental home that I'm living in to obviously live in, but it's nowhere near the same as my old house. It's half as big, and it's just, I don't know, it just makes things harder to deal with. It's not home to me, it's just a house. I have mixed feelings about seeing my community after Sandy, because there are a lot of people who are still struggling, and there's a lot of people who lost everything. I think we've psychologically, a lot of people in New Jersey have moved past Sandy, but physically I think New Jersey's still healing, which obviously is going to take a lot of time, and a lot of people will never get over it because they lost too much. I'd like to think that at least one day things will be back to normal, or as normal as they can be for having to deal with something like this.